Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the Viltrox 85mm f1.8. What a lens! Let me show you some pictures and then we're going to be back here to talk about it. So as you've seen, the performance out of this lens is spectacular. I'm honestly very pleased with it. So I beg your pardon for the spoiler. So if you want to skip the rest of the video, please by all means do it. But honestly, yes, it's a really nice lens, and together with the price, which is about 380 euros, this made for this lens, this made a great selling point. And it was such a good selling lens that Viltrox realized that this being a lens designed for full frame, they had to come up with a second version, the Mark II, which is the one that I have, that was specifically tweaked for APS-C sensor cameras. And they nailed it. They nailed it in almost every aspect. I'll tell you why in a bit. The construction of this lens is really good. It's a metal barrel with a plastic hood, which is pretty normal in almost all the lens, and it's got some heft to it, but it's a good heft. It feels solid. I actually prefer this construction to the one in the newer lenses, the 33 f1.4, for example. I know it feels better. The lens weighs 450 grams, which is less than the previous version, the Mark I, and this is the optimized version for APS-C, and it's even lighter than the 90mm f2, even though I must say that in the hands it feels bigger, even though it's not really that big, because compared to the 90 f2 is a little bit shorter, but it's a little bit fatter. So in the hands, this makes you feel like it's bigger than it actually is. But it's not a big problem. It's a little bit front heavy on the X-T3, but this is probably due to the grip on the camera that is not so deep, so you would feel the weight a little bit more. But again, it's not a big deal at all. And it's got a good manual focusing ring, meaning that it's smooth. It's nice to use, but at the same time, it takes too long to move from one end to the other. So I would use the manual focus only to tweak the focus once you use like the back focus button to get to the certain level, because it takes way too long. It takes years to get from one end to the other. This lens doesn't have the aperture ring, which we're all accustomed to in a Fuji world. But if the aperture ring has to be like the one in the 33 f1.4, I'd rather have no aperture ring at all. It's easier to manage like this. And I said in the review that I made on the 33 f1.4. Other than that, forget about using this lens for macro. It's not a macro lens. Its minimum focusing distance is approximately 80 centimeters. So there's no way you can use it for close-ups or anything like that. But being a portrait lens, it makes sense. Portrait and macro are different worlds, and they require different kind of lenses. So it's not a big deal. When it comes to the optical quality, I'm really impressed with this lens. I already said that before. I'm really impressed. The lens is sharp from wide open, and it's sharp across the whole frame. This is probably due to the fact that, again, as I said, this lens was born for full frame, so using it on APS-C cuts the worst part of the lens out of the way. So it's good. It's good. Optically, it's really good. It's got almost no vignetting, and it's got also a nice bokeh. I really like it. And I mean, maybe the 90mm f2 is better, but this is not that far. I really liked the bokeh coming out of this lens. It suffered from a little bit of purple fringing. It's either green or purple, but not as much as the 33 does. And a little bit of, it's a little bit prone to flare. But if I have to be honest, it didn't bug me too much, because when used properly, that flare sometimes even adds to the scene. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but if you use it properly, it's not that bad. When compared to Fuji lenses, colors are a little bit different. It's a little bit colder on the Viltrox and a little bit warmer on the Fuji lenses, even though this difference is less noticeable than the one that we saw on the 33mm, which is a lot more evident as soon as you look at them. On top of that, same thing happened with the 33 f1.4. The lens exposes about 2/3 of a stop darker than a Fuji lens with the same settings. You're seeing that right now. It's visible. It's not a big deal, but it's worth being told. It's worth being noticed, because you assume it's a 1.8 lens, but at the end of the day, it exposes like f2.2. Not a big deal again, but it's worth being noticed. When it comes to the autofocus, we need to split two different worlds, which is photography and video. The autofocus for photography, I found it really good. It's not on par with the Fuji lenses like the 90 or 16-80, but it's really fast and it's silent, and it's really accurate. And it got even better with the latest firmware update, which is the 1.0.8 that Viltrox released recently. Well, forget about video with this lens. The lens is not stabilized, and it's not a big deal because you have other means to use the lens, but it suffers from an incredible focus breathing. You're seeing it right now. It's unusable. And its autofocus, it's not smooth. When it comes to focus transition, is far from being smooth, regardless of the settings. Even if I slow it down, it becomes slower, but it doesn't become smooth at all. So basically, I wouldn't count this lens as a video tool. It's not a video tool. At least for me, it's like it was not born for video, and you can tell. So, in conclusion, what we can say about this lens? We can say that the pros of this lens are its cost, which is really incredible for the performance and for the construction. Its aperture, which is 1.8, its nominal aperture, its solid construction, and the autofocus for stills, which is really fast and accurate. On the cons side, honestly, there's not that much. If we cut the video out, there's not that much we can say. Yes, it's slightly colder than the Fuji lenses. Yes, it loses 2/3 of a stop compared to the Fuji lens at the same settings. But other than that, there's not much to complain about this lens. So in general, I would say that this is a perfect lens for someone who's on a budget and wants to try portrait photography, because honestly, you spend between 1/3 and a half of the price of the 90mm from Fuji and you get a lot of performance out of it. As long as you understand that for video is not a good lens, but if it's for photography, this is actually a great lens. For the price, it's almost incredible, and I'm really pleased that Viltrox came out with this lens. And I'm really looking forward for what Viltrox is gonna continues to provide for Fujifilm, because we need these third-party lenses. So, well, if you made it thus far, thank you again. I ask you to subscribe and leave me a thumbs up if you liked the video, leave me a thumbs down if you didn't, and tell me why you didn't like it, because it's a growth for me knowing why you didn't like the video. And in general, comment, share what you think, because again, as I said already in other reviews, I would like to create a small community where we can talk and discuss, and I'll try to answer back to each one of the comments. So again, thank you, goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one, which is going to be focused on the new DJI Pocket 2, which is a great vlogging camera, and we will compare it also with the old DJI Osmo Pocket, which was the first of a new breed.